I grew up in Long Island, New York. I was one of three brothers, had a very nice childhood upbringing. My family realized when I was about 2 years old that I had an allergy to peanuts. There was one time I had a reaction, very slight reaction, but as a 2-year-old, slight reactions can be significant reaction. There were some hives. Anyway, went through the tests for it, found out I have an allergy to peanuts and all tree nuts. So for most of my life and all my life, I avoid peanuts and tree nuts and do the best I can with that. And I never had any reactions or anything ever came up. And I moved to LA at 23 years old. I didn't know anyone, didn't know anything. I was full of life and I was gonna go make it big and start my career in real estate. And I was at a friend of mine's birthday party on a Sunday evening. I wasn't drinking at the time. I was fully sober, fully aware, just mixing and mingling with everybody. And up until that point, that night, I never had a reaction. I never had anything close to a scare with a food allergy or a peanut or anything like that. They ended up serving cake. I take a piece. It looks like a regular chocolate cake. I just remember taking a little sliver of the cake and putting it in my mouth and then thinking something tastes weird. Wait, there's a peanut in here. Something is off. And it was so quick, I didn't even know what it was because I honestly don't really know what peanuts or peanut or anything like that really tastes like. It just tasted off. And I was like, oh, wait, what is this? And then I end up swallowing such a small amount. It wouldn't even cover more than half the fork. And I thought, oh, geez, I think that was a peanut. I don't know, was it? And then I looked later to check that, oh, yeah, there's peanuts in the cake. And at first my reaction was, who has a peanut cake? I've never seen a peanut cake for a birthday. Who is serving that now? Then from that point on, I think, all right, okay, I'm fine, nothing happened. My mouth was maybe a little itchy. Maybe the bubbles in the soda will help, my mouth. So I have, a couple sips. I'm like, all right, I'm all right. No big deal. I'm gonna go home, take 2 Benadryl, go to sleep, wake up, and get on with my day for Monday. So I end up leaving the party. I go home. Everything's absolutely fine. It's probably around 9:30, 10 right now. I get home. I take the 2 Benadryl. Then I go lay down. Lights are off. And I'm laying in bed, and it's like 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, I don't feel well. I'm feeling kind of hot. I'm a little itchy. Something's off. My body's chemistry's off. Maybe I need another Benadryl. Maybe it's the Benadryl that's causing me to have this reaction right now. And I turn on the mirror, and I remember looking, and this moment was so profound, because this is the first time I sensed something could have actually really been wrong. I was completely red. I had hives all over my neck, my face, my hands, my armpits, my body. And I thought, okay, this is something more serious. I think, let me grab the Benadryl, but at this point, let me also see if I can find my EpiPens, which are most likely expired at this point. So I then start digging through my little medicine cabinet, and I came across my EpiPens, and lo and behold, they were expired like 6-8 months ago. So I thought, all right, great, now we have a situation. And I thought, okay, what am I gonna do? Then I start sitting there, and at this point, I was relatively okay, then I was in pain, and then I just seemed to kind of turn over where everything got much worse very quickly. What I was going through was the anaphylaxis, and that's when it started to speed up. Then the breathing got harder. Then I started to panic. Then my eyes were bloodshot. The redness came out. Then I'm like, am I breathing? Is my throat closing? Because that's what was going on. My throat was closed during the anaphylaxis, so I was worrying about being able to breathe. But I decided to grab my EpiPens and drive myself to the hospital. I figured it was a Sunday night in Los Angeles. There was no traffic. It was around 10:30, 11 o'clock. I was probably only 15, 20 minutes away tops. And I thought, you know what? This will be the fastest way for me to get there. And I remember driving and just going and thinking, how far am I going to make it before I have to use this epinephrine? And once you use epinephrine, it's very hard to have any other motor skills. You can't really move. You're not going to be able to drive. So I thought, let me just get as close as I can. And I'm driving. And I get to the hospital and I pull in and I stumble out of the car and I have my wallet in my hand, and at this point, my breathing is really very difficult. I'm totally red. The nurse behind the desk looks at me and she goes, "Do you have any identification?" And I just remember my hands trying to pull out my ID, and I couldn't do it. And I remember falling, kind of like leaning over, and she jumped up behind the chair. The other nurse came around, and they grabbed me, and they carried me back. And I remember being put on the bed, and all these nurses and a doctor surround me, and they cut off my shirt, and I'm starting to fade in and out. They put oxygen on me. At this point, I was only taking in about 10% of the amount of oxygen you should be taking in. I had Benadryl going in through my wrist. I had an epidural going in as well. And I remember being in that specific moment, and the doctor looked at me and said, "I'm so sorry, I can't save your life. The epinephrine isn't working." Sometimes the anaphylaxis is so far that it can't be stopped, it can't be reversed, and they couldn't stop it. There's no oxygen in my body, I'm suffocating. I remember thinking to myself, like, this is it, I'm dying. Just feeling nothing and being accepting of it in a way. And I remember thinking that the only thing that really mattered was, kindness and people, and nothing material mattered. And I'm laying here suffocating to death on a hospital bed away from everybody. And things get very clear very quickly in that moment. I remember laying there and just this energy of absolute euphoria and bliss, and thinking, that's it, like I'm done, like I'm leaving this. I remember I was not in my body at that point. Like I was gone. It's interesting, even 7.5 years later, it's still very hard to discuss. And I remember both my grandfathers, who passed away, one many years ago, one when I was very, very young, like 3 or 4 years old, coming to me in that situation. They didn't say much. They just said very clearly, like clear as day, emotion direct, was, it's not your time. You have work to do. You have to go back. And I didn't fight it. I didn't, I've heard other NDE stories where they say, no, I want to go. I was just kind of like, I don't want to die anymore. That's it. I don't want it. Not that I ever wanted to die. I just kind of had the feeling that it was happening. I then thought, okay, I want to live. And then within a split second, even within that, when they're like, you have to go back, I want to live, boom, I came back, and for the first time since I could remember, I felt pain, and I was grasping for air, and I was trying to breathe, and I was responsive. And I wasn't responsive for the last 20 minutes before that. And I just remember saying, I need oxygen. I started speaking. I wasn't speaking at all, and I was moving, and I was clawing, and I started to fight to breathe. And I was shaking so much from the epinephrine that they were holding my legs down. I remember my grandfather on my father's side saying, take it easy, which is something he would always say, which is really funny. That like he's saying, take it easy, when I'm like back and I'm back and I'm like trying to breathe and I'm gasping and I can't speak. And he's like, take it easy, you're fine. It was almost a little violent when I first came back. It was just the noise, the light, and the excruciating pain, and that the emotion was back and the 5 senses were back. I was back in my body and I was consciously back in this realm, and I was fighting for air and fighting to breathe. I eventually stabilized. The swelling went down, the hives went away, my breathing was fine. They monitored me for about 8 or so more hours. I had no concept of time. I thought I was there for 40 minutes. When I was getting ready to leave, they said I was there for about 8 hours. The nurses said, on a scale from 1 to 10, you were a 9.5. We thought you were gone. We didn't think we were going to save you. And you were unrecognizable from the person that we carried in here. You're unrecognizable. They're like, we don't have an explanation for this. Sure, if you want to go home, there's nothing we would keep you here. I always joke and I say I really knew I was back to this world when I was at the hospital, and then I left. I got in my car and I had to pay for parking. So I was like, well, I'm back to the world in Los Angeles. I died an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, and now I got to pay for parking. The first 5 days after were extremely painful. I remember laying in bed for 2 or 3 days after where I just remember thinking it hurt to breathe. I had no idea what an NDE was. I didn't know what happened. I just had this insane experience that I didn't really talk about much. Once the pain subsided, I kind of was able to really think about what happened and went through everything. And the biggest thing I remember, every day for about 6 months, I would wake up and I would not know who I was. Things would happen day to day, or emotions or thoughts, and I didn't recognize them. I remember my eyes readjusting. I ate a more vegetarian and cleaner diet. I slept less. I always grew up fairly intuitive. It was just intuitive. It wasn't anything more than that. But after the experience, I became much more intuitive. And in the years after, and also working on it, I've become fairly psychic and have mediumship abilities. I don't know, I hear the term that they say they're gifts you come back with, or I feel they were always there, and I don't know if the NDE helped increase them or uncovered what was already there or just brought me to a different vibration. And then to go back to have people that I was friends with, or fraternity brothers, or my family, or colleagues, and the people that then saw me when I went back were like, oh yeah, Chris is different. Now it's, whatever, but there was a different person that came back. My values, ideas, and perception of self changed it. And I haven't given up motivation, determination, or ambition. I feel I'm more ambitious than ever. And, sometimes I'll joke with people. I say, if you think this is bad, I suffocated to death, and I'm going to do anything at this point. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of failure. I'm not encumbered by anything. It still drives me to do well in business and life and be active and enjoy life more than anything. I mean, having had the experience of having it all taken away like that and then giving a second opportunity. Many people don't ever have a second opportunity. There was a woman months later that had the same situation happen. She accidentally ate a piece of, she had ice cream. And in the ice cream, there was a nut from cross-contamination, and she went into anaphylaxis and then went into a coma and then got out of the coma several months later, and then since then has been in a vegetative state. So to go from something where I should have died, well, if I didn't pass away, I should have been severely mentally handicapped due to lack of oxygen to my brain. And I didn't. I walked out. That's always something that's grounded me, and it's also at times a little scary because it shows how fragile life is and how clear life gets and priorities or what is and isn't important when you are laying on a bed and you're dying. Very few things matter. It's dictated a lot of my relationships and how I've decided to live my life. I never spoke about this for 6.5 years. I would not talk about it. Everyone knew I had a peanut allergy, and that's it. People said what happened is I had a really bad reaction, and that was it. People would ask me, I would not discuss it. But what's given me that extra push is I've met people that have had experiences and others that hearing these stories and hearing others' experiences has really helped them. And given that I was allowed a second chance, I feel it's fair that I can give back. And if 1 or 2 people hear this and it helps them in any way, then that's fine. It's worth it to me. As difficult as it still is every moment I discuss it, or even some days when I just deal with it, that's fine. So I found strength in that. It's very difficult using language to describe near-death experiences, because even when I talk about the experience, there's some things I can't use any language for to describe, or whether it's the beauty or the consciousness or the idea of being in that position. Language, I've realized from this experience, is very limited. Having had my experience, I look at death as an event that's very natural and an event that's not to be feared. It was okay. and I live my life as much as I can in gratitude and look at everything as a blessing from here on out. It's really interesting. I've always, as a saying, I always say, even in life, I say, listen, unfortunately, bad things happen to good people. What I've come to realize and what I think is there's a consciousness and energy beyond us in this world that we don't see, we don't hear, we sometimes get glimpses of it. And there's a bigger plan or there's bigger reasons behind it. There's always going to be pain and suffering in this world. That is always going to happen. It's a part of life. And as unfortunate as it is and painful and sad, I would feel that we just have to look at it differently and say there's something behind this that I don't know at the moment. Maybe eventually I will realize what it is, or there'll be something more to it. I mean, how often have little things happened where, you then find out a week or a month or a couple hours later, oh, thank God that happened. Good thing I couldn't find my keys. I didn't get on this and I avoided an accident. We never know so much. And I feel with the bigger moments, with these tragedies, we look back and we say, oh, wow, like we didn't know. It could have been much worse. You're never going to get rid of whatever happened to you, a tragic event, an NDE, anything from your childhood or adulthood at any age. It's really a simple question of, well, we're not trying to fix anything, but really how can we take this event and integrate it into your life so you can function first and foremost, and then second from there, is there any way you can benefit and or grow forward and this make you a better person, or you're able to share or go from there. And I feel there's always good in everything. And sometimes we're too caught up in the moment to realize it, or maybe it has to come later once the initial emotion's over. But there's always, from what I've seen, there's always something positive that can come out. And I've chosen to focus on that and learn and grow and evolve. And it hasn't always been easy. It's been very tough. Having had an NDE, there's been a lot of strong feeling of loneliness at times, even around people. You feel like you don't fit in. You feel that you're just like in the wrong place. Like you look around at society and say, what am I doing here? I'm longing for a home I don't know. I always joke, I said, I've done every single practice modality of healing, visualization that you could ever imagine. Part of that was before I moved to Southern California, before I had a near-death experience, but I've done it all: sound baths, Reiki, energy healing, acupuncture, tarot cards, crystals. I look at spirituality as a buffet, like a buffet at a restaurant. And there are certain practices that someone may resonate more with, and there's others that they don't. I'm not a fan of yoga. It hasn't done much for me. I don't like it. I really enjoy sweat lodges. I really enjoy deep meditation and crystals and sound baths and energy work. And I love, all the witches and mediums and psychics and all of that. And there's not a one glove fits all, and different healing practices affect people differently. And some things work, some things don't. And I always found that the word healing is not used in Western culture. It's just medicine and doctors and going to hospitals, where really the issue is, well, why don't we get back to healing? Why don't we heal the soul? What really is causing this issue? It's not, we always treat symptoms, but we never treat the actual root disease. And from my experience, I've doubled down on really digging and doing work. And spirituality is work, working on yourself to wake up and be kind and non-reactive and seeing the bigger picture and trying to evolve your emotional and mental hardware. It takes a lot of work. It's not, just sitting around with crystals chanting. I mean, yeah, we do that. It looks funny and cool, but we're attempting to do work behind it. And I would love to see where we kind of take away this comical look towards that, because it does heal people. And I feel that there's a lot of parts of our society and certain demographics that don't believe in that, where they could really, really benefit from alternative therapies, because everything we've done in this, in this country, and I'll just speak about this country, is that it hasn't worked. We're fatter than ever, we're sicker than ever, we're unhappier than ever, homes are more broken than ever, relationships are more strained than ever, so nothing's working. It's the definition of crazy. We need to return back to a sense of self and community and spirituality. We need to go back to what this healing, we need to heal as an individual, we need to heal as a family, a community, and then you heal as a nation. I feel that we are at a point in society and time where it's breaking, where the inequality of the haves and have-nots are so severe. We have major discrepancies in quality of life, opportunity. A lot of it's dependent upon where you're born. People all over the world don't feel that it's fair, and that I feel is an issue. When you don't have fairness, or I live in Los Angeles and you see extreme wealth on one hand, and then you see extreme poverty on one hand, and there's really like a no man's land in the middle, you think to yourself, well, I'm just looking at this, I don't need an economics degree, this isn't working, this is not sustainable. Everyone's situation is different. I have some personal views on politics or economics, but I think regardless of what side of the spectrum you're on all issues, political, economic, or social, the divide is how we get to the point we all want to get at. And I think we forget that. We all want everyone to be healthy. We want everyone to be happy. We want everyone to feel they have an opportunity. We want to be able to take care of those that truly can't take care of themselves, or they maybe fall on hard times. The issue is we have different views on how we're going to accomplish that. And we only focus on fighting where we should really just say, hey, why don't we all want this to happen. So I would love to simplify everything, and I would love to have something that's practical and start from there. And action breeds more action, and then you can have change. I think at the end of the day, happiness in many cases is an individual's job. Everyone controls their own destiny to as much as they can. And there are people that have more than you, have had more opportunity. There are people that have had less. And life will never be fair. There are times when it's not fair for you, and there's other times where you do have an advantage. And there's multiple ways of looking at that. You can look at that and say, hey, I didn't have all this, maybe I have to work harder. Okay, well then you gotta work harder. And I look at the state of where we are, I think the world's always been crazy. And if we just got back to the idea of nothing complex, we make everything complex, and we gotta do this, we gotta do that. If we just focused on local kindness and an idea of universal love, that's really all we need. I know it's very hippie, pie in the sky, but if we can just make it so basic where someone was just like, I'm just gonna be kind today. Maybe I won't beep the horn. Maybe I'll let someone go in front of me. Maybe, I'll pause before I use this language, or I do that, or anything. Just the way we treat each other. I don't feel in any way, if you're pursuing success anywhere in this world, whether you're in a city, whether you're a college student, you're a business professional, or a stay-at-home parent, why that would somehow prevent you from being kind and loving, why you can't be in a position where you can help others. I think that's a very convenient excuse. The simplest thing can change someone's life. And we have this idea it's got to be something like so big and grand, but a simple hello in the morning, or walking down the street and just picking up a piece of trash is significant. And we've seemed to forget that. We've seemed to have this idea that it has to be this grand thing to save the world and do this and do that. And whereas the person that lives life well, cleaned up the neighborhood, hey, every morning, he helped his elderly neighbor take out her trash. He did that. Or he got flowers for someone that was in the hospital, that there was an older woman that no one did that for. Those are what I've realized what really has an effect. And I think this whole idea of, well, I live in a busy city and there's this chaos around me, which there may be, but let's not add to the chaos. You have that ability to not let it affect you. And we want to raise that vibration. We're not fulfilled anymore as a society. Every problem we have in the West now, many of it comes from a crisis of spirituality, a crisis of self where we've left it. And, if there's any problem, we run to a pill. If there's anything we need, we just swipe a credit card. We never actually take a moment to stop and think and say, well, wait, why am I swiping a credit card? Why am I taking this pill? Maybe there's something I need to fix. And we have left the idea of getting back at the root and saying, this might be painful. This might not be discomforting at the moment, but I'm going to correct this. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to shed some light on this. I'm then going to fix it, improve, and then you get the fulfillment and the happiness because, wow, I've done something. I changed something. I've built something. I've corrected something. If it's all easy, there's nothing left to do. There's nothing to conquer. There's nothing to achieve. And I use the word conquer as like a person, I did something really well. I ran a marathon. You ever meet someone who meets a marathon? It's not the marathon, it's that they did it. It's that, I lost 70 pounds and ran a marathon. That's where the happiness was. It's not that they finished, it's that they did it. It's that they corrected something. And we forgot that. Like we forgot about community. It's not taught in schools. We forgot about health. It's not taught about what's proper to eat or what's the importance of clean water and air. I would love to see a real holistic wellness approach to health and lifestyle and balance. And from there, I think we can really connect everything. There'd be more opportunity and people would feel less disconnected. Because when you feel disconnected, when you have homeless encampments and then Rolls Royces, you just think, why do I care anymore? You lose it at that point. It's just visually too much where you say, this is ridiculous. And I want to get away from that because that breaks down community. And I would love to see that, and I would love for us to look at solutions differently and break down some of these old constructs we had of how we handled things and go from there and try something new for what's not working. And I feel we're at a point now where we have the ability to do that. And we're looking at that, and we can. And it's going to start at a local level. And if we start with little things, the greatest things happen organically.